When I married into the prestigious Davenport family, I thought I was living a fairy tale in their old money New England estate. But beneath the surface of charity galas and polo matches lay a dark secret. The heirloom, a most horrifying tradition family ritual, designed to test the loyalty of new wives. My narcissistic husband and his cruel mother gaslit me into believing it was an honor. They forced me to participate, convinced my trauma bond was strong enough to keep me silent. They were wrong. They thought they were testing my loyalty. I was secretly gathering evidence. This is not just a story time about escaping a toxic family. It's a revenge story about how I turned their twisted legacy against them and watched their perfect world burn. This is the story of how I took back my life. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, go ahead and give it a like. It really helps me out. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks a bunch. There's a specific kind of cold that seeps into your bones in coastal Connecticut. A damp chill that clings to the old stone walls and whispers through the bare branches of ancient oak trees. It's the kind of cold I'll forever associate with the Davenports. When I first met my husband, Ethan, he was my escape from that cold. He was warm and charming, the golden boy heir to a shipping fortune, with a smile that could disarm armies. He made me, a scholarship kid from the Midwest with a history I was desperate to outrun, feel seen, feel chosen. Our wedding was a society affair, a blur of champagne, reporters from town and country, and the suffocating approval of his mother, Beatrice. She was the matriarch of the Davenport clan, a woman sculpted from ice and disapproval, who ran their sprawling Greenwich estate with the precision of a military general. From the beginning, she treated me with a kind of polite, surgical disdain. My clothes were never quite right, my opinions a little too loud, my background a stain on their pristine family tapestry. Ethan would always laugh it off. "That's just mother," he'd say, squeezing my hand. "It's her way of showing she cares, she's just testing you. I know what you're thinking, red flags, red flags." But the love I felt for Ethan was a powerful anesthetic. I was so caught up in the whirlwind of his world, the charity galas, the weekends in Nantucket, the dizzying sense of belonging, that I ignored the prickle of unease. The trauma bond was already forming. His family's conditional acceptance felt so much better than the outright rejection I'd known my whole life, that I was willing to do anything to keep it. I learned to be quiet, to smile, to agree. I was so desperate for a family that I convinced myself this was what a family was. The first time I heard the word heirloom was about 6 months after we were married. We were at one of Beatrice's suffocatingly formal Sunday dinners. She was talking about Ethan's great-grandmother, a woman whose severe oil-painted portrait loomed over the dining room. "Eleonora was the strongest of us all," Beatrice said, her voice sharp as broken glass. She understood what it meant to be a Davenport woman. She honored the heirloom without question. Ethan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I glanced at him, but he avoided my eyes, focusing intently on cutting his filet mignon. "What's the heirloom?" I asked, my voice sounding small in the cavernous room. Beatrice fixed me with her pale, assessing eyes. A slow, thin smile spread across her lips. "It's a tradition, dear. A rite of passage for every woman who marries into this family. It ensures the purity of the line. It's a testament to a wife's devotion and loyalty. You'll understand when the time is right." Her words hung in the air, heavy and ominous. Again, Ethan said nothing. Later that night, when I pressed him, he became vague and dismissive. "It's just some old weird family thing, Maya. Don't worry about it. It's mostly symbolic now." He framed my face with his hands, his expression a perfect blend of love and concern. "Are you getting anxious again? You overthink things. Just trust me. I would never let anything bad happen to you." The gaslighting was so smooth, so practiced. He made my valid fear sound like a symptom of a personal failing, a flaw in my own character. It was easier to believe him than to confront the terrifying possibility that he was lying. That cognitive dissonance, the loving husband versus the man keeping a dark secret, was a chasm I was too afraid to look into. My time came a year later, when I became pregnant with our son. The news was met with a strange, almost clinical excitement from Beatrice. It wasn't the warm joy of a grandmother-to-be. It was the satisfaction of a CEO whose long-term project was finally coming to fruition. One evening, about 4 months into my pregnancy, Ethan and Beatrice sat me down in the study. The room was dark, paneled in mahogany, smelling of old leather and secrets. "It's time," Beatrice announced, her hands folded neatly in her lap. "Time for what?" I asked, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. "The heirloom," Ethan said, his voice quiet. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "And then they told me. The tradition was this. On the night of the first full moon after a Davenport wife confirms her pregnancy, she is to be taken to the old family hunting lodge, a secluded cabin deep in the woods on their property. There, she is left alone for 3 days and 3 nights. No phone, no internet, no contact with the outside world. She is given only water, a single loaf of bread, and a leather-bound journal, the same one used by generations of Davenport women to document her reflections. The purpose, they explained, was to strip away all distractions, to force her to confront her own soul and prove she was worthy of carrying the next Davenport heir. It was, Beatrice said, a spiritual crucible. I stared at them, horrified. You want to leave me pregnant alone in the woods for 3 days? That's insane. It's dangerous. What if something happens? Nothing will happen, Beatrice said, her tone icy. The lodge is perfectly secure. This isn't a negotiation, Maya. This is our way. It's a small sacrifice to prove your commitment to this family, to Ethan, to your unborn child. I looked at Ethan, my eyes pleading. Ethan, please. This is crazy. He finally looked at me, and his face was a mask of strained sincerity. Baby, I know it sounds intense, but it's important to my mother. It's important to our family's history. It's an honor. My mother did it. My grandmother did it. It's a way of connecting with them, of showing you're one of us now. I'll be right here at the main house waiting for you. It's only 3 days. His words hit me like a physical blow. An honor? I was being told that my isolation and terror were a gift. My gut was screaming that this was wrong, that it was a cruel and abusive test. But the other part of me, the part that had been so carefully groomed for the past 2 years, the part that was desperately codependent on his approval, whispered, what if he's right? What if this is just what you have to do to belong? I had learned to be helpless so gradually that I didn't even recognize my own cage. I felt trapped. If I refused, I would be the difficult, unworthy outsider. I would lose everything, the family, the life, the man I thought I loved. So with a sense of sickening dread, I agreed. I let them convince me that their horrifying tradition was a beautiful legacy. The night of the full moon arrived, cold and clear. Ethan drove me to the lodge in a golf cart. The place was even more menacing than I'd imagined. A dark, timber-frame cabin squatting under the shadows of towering pines. Inside, it was Spartan and dusty. A single bed, a fireplace, a rocking chair, and a small table where the jug of water, the loaf of bread, and the ancient journal sat waiting. Ethan kissed me at the door. I love you, he whispered. Be strong. I'll be back for you Sunday at dawn. His words felt hollow. The click of the heavy wooden door locking from the outside was the loudest sound I had ever heard. I was alone. The first day was a blur of fear and disbelief. The silence was absolute, broken only by the skittering of unseen things outside and the frantic beating of my own heart. I tried to rationalize. It's just 3 days. You're fine. They love you. But the isolation was a physical presence, pressing in on me. I thought about my baby, and a wave of protective fury washed over me. What kind of family puts their unborn child at risk for a tradition? That night, unable to sleep, I lit a single candle and opened the journal. The pages were brittle, filled with the elegant, spidery handwriting of generations of women. I started to read. The early entries from the 19th and early 20th centuries were pious and formal. Women writing about prayer, about their duty to their husbands and the Davenport name. But as I got closer to the present, the tone began to change. I found the entry from Ethan's grandmother, written in the 1960s. Her handwriting was shaky. The silence is a liar, she wrote. It makes you think you are the one who is mad, but it is the house that is mad. The family, they watch you, even when you are alone. Then I found Beatrice's entry from 1985. Her script was a tight, angry slash across the page. They will never break me. Let them watch. Let them listen. I will give them nothing. I will carve my own name into this family with a knife if I have to. This child will be my victory, not my surrender. A cold dread trickled down my spine. This wasn't a spiritual retreat. This was a psychological prison. I suddenly understood what Ethan's grandmother meant by they watch you. I got up and started searching the cabin, my hands trembling. It didn't take long to find them. Tiny, pinhole cameras, expertly hidden in the dark wood of the ceiling beams. A microphone tucked into the base of an old oil lamp. They were watching me. They were listening to my every breath, my every sob. This wasn't about my spiritual purity. This was about control. It was a panopticon, a test to see if I would break, to see if I would complain or cry or curse their name, to see if I was truly, utterly subservient. And my husband, my loving, protective husband, was in on it. He had knowingly locked his pregnant wife in a surveillance room to be monitored by his mother. The last vestige of my love for him shattered in that moment. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was a violation so profound it stole the air from my lungs. The man I had married did not exist. He was a performance, and I was his co-star in a horror movie I hadn't known I was in. But as the rage and terror washed over me, something else rose in their place. A cold, hard resolve. Beatrice had written that this child would be her victory. She was wrong. This child would be my victory. They wanted a show. They wanted to see the devoted, compliant Davenport wife. I would give them the performance of a lifetime, and I would use their own twisted tradition, their own sick surveillance, to burn their entire world to the ground. I picked up the journal, my hand no longer shaking, and I began to write my own entry. But this entry wasn't for them. It was for me. It was a battle plan. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, go ahead and give it a like. It really helps me out. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks a bunch. I spent the next 48 hours playing the part of the perfect captive. I sat in the rocking chair for hours, staring serenely into the fireplace. I ate the dry bread with quiet dignity. I wrote in the journal, filling the pages with saccharine prose about the clarifying power of solitude and my deepening gratitude for the Davenport legacy. I spoke aloud to my unborn son, my voice full of soft maternal love, telling him how lucky he was to be born into such a strong, principled family. I knew they were watching, listening. I was feeding them the exact narrative they wanted, lulling the snakes in their den. Inside, I was a furnace of rage. I documented everything in my mind, the location of the cameras, the type of microphone, the chilling words from the journal. This wasn't just about escaping anymore. It was about retribution. They had tried to break me down, to test my loyalty to them. Now, I would test theirs. When Ethan came to unlock the door on Sunday morning, I greeted him with a radiant, beatific smile. I threw my arms around him, my face a perfect mask of relief and love. It was the most profound experience of my life, I whispered. Thank you, I understand now. He visibly relaxed, the guilt melting from his face, replaced by proud ownership. He had put me through a crucible, and I had emerged as his perfect wife. The narcissist's dream. Beatrice was waiting at the main house. She looked me up and down, searching for cracks in my facade. I met her gaze with unwavering calm. The heirloom is a gift, Beatrice, I said, using her first name for the first time. I'm honored to be a part of it. I had passed their test, and in doing so I had gained their trust. This was my most valuable weapon. The next 5 months were a masterclass in deception. I was the model Davenport wife. I hosted charity luncheons. I wore the right clothes. I deferred to Beatrice in all things. I played the part so well that even I sometimes felt the lines blurring. But every night, after Ethan fell asleep, I would slip into my home office and work. I'm a freelance archivist and digital researcher by trade, a skill they'd always dismissed as a quaint little hobby. I started digging into the Davenport family history. Not the glossy, curated version in their library, but the real one, buried in public records, old newspapers, and digitized legal documents. The family's horrifying tradition wasn't just about psychological torture. It had a practical legal purpose. I found a pattern. In the 1920s, a Davenport wife had tried to leave her husband, claiming mental cruelty and citing the heirloom ritual. The family's lawyers had successfully argued that she was unstable, using her own hysterical journal entries as proof. They painted her as an unfit mother, and she lost custody of her children. It had happened again in the 1960s, this time with Ethan's own grandmother. She too had lost. The heirloom wasn't just a ritual, it was an insurance policy. It was a preemptive strike, a way to gather psychological ammunition against any wife who might one day dare to defy them or leave. The surveillance, the isolation, it was all designed to produce a crazy woman whose testimony could be easily discredited. And the journal was the key. It was Exhibit A. But they had made one critical mistake. They had underestimated me. And they had no idea that I had a secret weapon of my own. Before I married Ethan, I had insisted on a very specific clause in our prenuptial agreement. My lawyer, a brilliant and ruthless woman named Sarah, had fought for it. It was a lifestyle clause, often mocked as a cheating clause, but ours was different. It stipulated that if the marriage ended due to proven acts of extraordinary cruelty, psychological or otherwise, the standard terms of the prenup were voided, and a much larger settlement would be triggered, along with a fund established for the sole care and custody of any children. Ethan and his family's lawyers had laughed at it, calling it overly dramatic, but had agreed, confident it would never be invoked. They had no idea their family tradition fell squarely into that category. My plan had two phases. Phase 1 was gathering indisputable evidence. Phase 2 was detonation. I needed to get back into that lodge. I waited a month, then feigned a moment of spiritual weakness with Beatrice. "I feel so disconnected lately," I told her, my voice trembling slightly. "I know it's unconventional, but I feel a pull to go back to the lodge for just one night, to reconnect with the experience." Her eyes lit up. My willing return to the site of my transformation was the ultimate proof of her success. She agreed immediately. This time when Ethan dropped me off, I wasn't scared. I was a soldier on a mission. I had a tiny state-of-the-art digital recorder, no bigger than a cufflink, and a micro camera pen. I spent 8 hours in that cabin, documenting everything. I filmed the hidden cameras. I recorded the ambient sound from the hidden microphone. I took high-resolution pictures of the most damning pages in the journal. I created a digital archive of their entire sick system. Then I sat down and wrote one final gushing entry in their journal, a masterpiece of devotion. The final piece of my plan fell into place a week before my due date. The Davenports hosted an annual Heritage Ball, their biggest philanthropic event of the year, held in a massive, opulent tent on the estate grounds. It was the pinnacle of their social calendar, attended by Connecticut's most powerful and influential people, politicians, judges, business titans. The local media covered it extensively. It was the perfect stage. I worked with my lawyer, Sarah, and a PR firm that specialized in crisis management, or in this case, crisis creation. We prepared a package. It contained the video from the lodge, the audio recordings, the photos of the journal, a copy of the prenuptial agreement with the cruelty clause highlighted, and a meticulously crafted press release. The night of the ball, I felt a strange, thrilling calm. I was 9 months pregnant, wearing a custom-made navy blue gown. Ethan was by my side, preening, accepting accolades for his family's generosity. Beatrice was holding court like a queen. At exactly 9:00 p.m., as Ethan was on stage giving a speech about the importance of family values and legacy, Sarah hit send. The package went to every single media outlet in the tri-state area and to the personal emails of every major guest at that ball. The effect was instantaneous and beautiful. A low murmur started at the tables near the back as people began looking at their phones. The murmur grew into a wave of shocked whispers. Phones were being passed from person to person. Faces turned from admiration to horror. On the stage, Ethan faltered, seeing the expressions on the faces of his friends and colleagues. He looked at his mother, whose face had gone ashen. Then, my own phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. "Detonation complete. Exit now." I stood up from our table at the front. Every eye in the room swiveled to me, the very pregnant, abused wife. I didn't say a word. I simply looked at Ethan on the stage, a look of calm, pitying finality on my face. And then I turned and walked slowly, deliberately, out of the tent. My silent exit was more powerful than any scream. The aftermath was a glorious firestorm. The story was everywhere. The Davenport's dark secret, the heirloom tradition exposed. Their carefully constructed world of prestige and respectability crumbled overnight. The politicians and judges scrambled to distance themselves. The charities returned their donations. They were social pariahs. Ethan and Beatrice tried to fight it, of course. They released a statement calling me a troubled and manipulative woman, twisting the narrative as they always had. But the evidence was too strong. The audio, the video, it was undeniable. My lawyer filed for divorce, invoking the cruelty clause. Faced with a protracted public legal battle they were guaranteed to lose, they settled. The settlement was massive. It was enough to ensure that my son and I would want for nothing, ever. But the money wasn't the point. The victory was in the truth. The victory was in the justice. I gave birth to my son, Leo, a week later. I live with him now in a quiet, sunny town in California, as far from the Connecticut cold as I can get. I'm no longer a Davenport. I took back my own name. Leo will grow up knowing nothing of their twisted traditions, only of love and light and safety. Sometimes, the media will run a "where are they now" piece on the Davenports. Their fortune is diminished, their name is a disgrace. Beatrice is a recluse. Ethan, I heard, had a breakdown of his own, a real one. It brings me no joy, but it brings me no sorrow either. It's just a consequence. They tried to make me a character in their dark fairy tale, a helpless princess locked in a tower. They didn't realize I was the one who was going to burn the castle down. They thought the heirloom was their legacy. But in the end, the only legacy that matters is the one I am building now. For me, and for my son, built not on secrets and cruelty, but on courage and truth.